And now for a bombshell expose. Is there a deliberate attempt to create chaos and raise crime in Britain by deep state socialist groups like the Fabians? Because you've been told prisons are full. You've been told that we must endure the early release of dangerous rapists and criminals on our streets. You've been told this Labour government had no other choice. Well, well, well. An explosive exclusive by the Daily Express has revealed 3 of our so-called overflowing prisons are apparently sitting there half empty with hundreds of cells gathering dust. HMP Cookham Wood, meant for the young tearaways who terrorise our communities, is barely a third full. 83 scumbags, in my opinion, in a total of 180 spots. Well, that's almost 100 free spaces just in that prison alone. Then there's HMP Millsike, Britain's shiny new £250 million prison with 1,500 beds. And guess what? It's sitting at under 54% capacity with over 700 empty bunks. What on earth is going on here? David Lammy's disastrous Ministry of Justice claims that all male prisoners are over 80% packed, yet 2 facilities are allegedly under half full, with 7 more than a quarter empty. Meanwhile, so-called petty criminals who have unleashed hell on our high streets, domestic abusers who make women's lives a living hell, and prolific druggies are among those that are being fast-tracked out of the system early. And who are these lucky winners of the early release lottery? Well, it's not just petty shoplifters. We're talking about knife-wielding maniacs, sex predators and domestic batterers who've been handed a get-out-of-jail-free card on sentences under 4 years. A man released early from jail by the Labour government was just charged with murder just a few weeks ago on the early release programme. And that's not just an isolated case, by the way. Liam Matthews, who hours after his early release then hunted down and killed a 26-year-old man called Lewis Bell. On top of that, the number of accidental releases has been steadily increasing over the years. But get this, it has more than doubled to 262 since Labour took office. In England and Wales, a whopping 80% of all crime is committed by these same repeat offenders. It's totally nuts, isn't it? Well, the head of the National Police Chiefs Council, Gavin Stevens, has said things will only get worse as thousands more criminals will soon be, again, released on the streets, leaving taxpayers footing an extra £400 million bill in police costs next year. And who's in charge of fixing this utter mess? Well, it's no other than mastermind, champion himself, David Lammy.
Chemistry, what French word is used for a tube for transferring measured amounts of liquids?
Pass.
Wow. Yes, that's the same Lammy who refused to tell the House of Commons if more illegal migrant criminals had been accidentally released early and instead started getting defensive and just shouting.
That's why I'm at the dispatch box, also as Deputy Prime Minister. We know that. We've deported more in the last year than they deported in the last 5 years. Please, I'm not going to take any lecture from the Honourable Gentleman. 13,000 more bobbies we are putting on the streets, kicking out 5,000 foreign criminal offenders. I've got to say to the Honourable Gentleman, he should do better.
Yeah, well, moments after that, of course, it was exposed that there was illegal migrants out of the early release by accident. I mean, you can't make it up, can you? Yet you're shouting at the Tories. With all of this in mind, some of you might begin to ask if there's a political agenda here. Well, I did some digging. The Fabian Society, a group that influences our top Labour brass, you know, the one that's got the logo with the wolf in sheep's clothing in it, well, I found out what they think about all of this. A damning admission which was published in September 2024 on the Fabian Society website, with the author of the opinion piece claiming that the government should, quote, reduce the size of the prison population. And to achieve this, quote, suspending short sentences is a start. Now, this was published a couple of months after Labour took office and then began mass releasing of criminals. You can make up your minds as to whether or not you think there is a socialist agenda at play here, but regardless, it doesn't take away from that bombshell alleged claim that there are, well, hundreds at least, of empty prison cells across the country. Meanwhile, I think you're being gaslit by the government to believe that every prison is overflowing. And there you have it.
We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, TallyMoney is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. What is TallyMoney?
Well, at TallyMoney, you basically get gold you can spend. So we give people an individual account in their name, everyday account. They get a sort code, an account number. They use that account just like they would pounds from their bank, but it's milligrams of gold that we brand as Tally.
Okay. Why would you do that, though? What is the benefit to the customer instead of just having a normal pound sterling account?
Gold's performance against the pound is above 11% per annum over the last 25 years on average. But we still need money in our daily lives, and we have savings. We know that it's good common sense and prudent to save up for things, not just living credit. You know, whether it's a holiday or a rainy day, your retirement planning, you need to have money in your life, basically, that you can rely on, that's dependable, that nobody meddles with, that nobody can weaponize against you, which is another element of government control when it's the government currency, which we could talk about another time. And it should be pretty simple and straightforward, and that's what we deliver at Tally. And really, we just want people to feel safe and happy with their money. There was a time when the bigger your bank balance, the more confident you felt. Now it's like, I need to do something with it. I can't leave it there. In Tally, you can.
Okay, brilliant. Cameron Parry from TallyMoney, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.
Let's get the thoughts of my panel, journalist and broadcaster, Suzanne Evans, former Labour advisor, who, by the way, is also the current treasurer of the Fabian Society himself, and a former chairman, Paul Richards. I dragged him in especially for this berating tonight, and former Conservative advisor, Charlie Rowley. Well, Paul, we have to start with you, don't we? Now, your society has got this, this opinion piece published.
Yeah.
I've read some of your, thought work on Fabians, and you're very soft on, crime, punishment. You believe in some cases that actually, reducing prison sentences for those people who commit drug misuse perhaps should be, treated in the community, that prisons perhaps might be a last resort. Is that perhaps correct?
The Fabian Society does not have collective policy on anything at all. These are the individual views. Just as if you went on the GB News website, there'll be individuals there writing opinion pieces. That does not make it the opinion of GB News. It's the opinion of the person whose name's on it, right? So that's the first point. Secondly, if we were secretly running the government, I think we'd be doing a better job, frankly.
I don't know. You tell me, would you?
Well, we're not, I can say. We've been around since 1884 as a Fabian Society, and we've never had so much attention as right now, but it is not a shadowy sect.
Why is your logo a wolf in sheep's clothing?
It's not. It's an absolute myth.
What is it?
That logo of the wolf in sheep's clothing was an Edwardian joke by a couple of undergraduates that somehow on the internet now is being our logo, but absolutely isn't the logo at all. It was for a long time a tortoise, believe it or not, on the Aesop's fable of the tortoise and the hare. In other words, slow reform gets you there faster than
slow
rushing
reform
around.
Towards communism, perhaps.
Towards a more egalitarian society. But anyway, at the moment we don't have a logo, so there's no logo. Sorry.
Right. You got rid of it quickly, eh? Charlie, well, listen, I want to get back onto the real story. I was just having a bit of fun with Paul on that bit there. But I want to get back on the real story, because the Express are claiming that there's lots of these prison cells sitting empty, yet we are releasing quite dangerous people. I don't think these are petty criminals, by the way. I know we call them petty. I don't think they're petty at all. Do you think we should be doing something about this? Do you think the government should be looking and going, well, perhaps there maybe is some spaces we could use?
And maybe whose fault is it that the prisons are overflowing, Charlie?
Well, they're not overflowing. That's the problem. That's the bombshell.
They
That's the
are.
bombshell news
It's
story.
rubbish.
That there's plenty of places there, and I believe them. I believe that there are places there. But what I can't get my head around is why on earth, bearing in mind it did come up at the last Conservative government, it was one of the only things, not the only thing, but one of the good things I think I do rate Rishi Sunak for, is rejecting this early prisoner release. Because when you start to let standards slip like we've seen, early prisoner release, to let criminals that go on to commit more crime again, it's exactly as you said, 80% of people are going through that revolving door of the criminal justice system.
But Charlie,
that's when you have...
That's why he called the general election, though, isn't he? Because he knew this ticking time bomb. That's why he went early.
When you let standards slip, when you have an attitude of this government to let people out early, that's when you get prison governors taking their eye off the ball and letting people out willy-nilly who shouldn't be out at all. That's why there's been over a double number of people that are prisoners. We've got prisoners that have escaped that are on our streets tonight. People will be sitting at home thinking, my God, how on earth have we had 260, whatever it was, criminals released in this year under this government? That figure was far lower under the last government over the last decade. And that's because we refused to let out prisoners early. Now, if there is that capacity, which I think there could be, which is this bombshell story, then these prisoners should be continuing to serve their time in jail. It should be a deterrent to other people that think that if they can commit a crime that they're going to get away with it, because they're not. And I think this whole thing about prison it doesn't work. It does work. These people who commit crimes should be locked up. And I think, and not let out early.
Well, this is the thing about the early release, Suzanne, because at the end of the day, as data shows, 80% of them go on to recommit. So you're going to need the prison spaces back again in literally months. I mean, some of these people are recommitting crimes in days. Yeah. So what is the point?
I mean, that Keir Starmer's decision to release dangerous, violent criminals early was an absolute disgrace. And as you said, many of them have come back to go on to commit other crimes, including murder. It's absolutely awful. But I think the wider thing here, and this reminds me of COVID lockdowns when hospitals were supposedly completely overflowing, the doctors and nurses couldn't cope, and yet there they were, all doing dances on TikTok. And you remember there was one woman who went into her local A&E and found it was empty, and then they prosecuted her for breaking the lockdown rules or whatever it might be. There are lies, damned lies, and political lies. And this is what I find really hard, not just from this government, but from the former Conservative government too. We do not know what the truth is. They are not telling us the truth. They tell us prisons are overcrowded. The Daily Express proves that's not true. They said hospitals were completely operating at capacity and everybody was dead on their feet. It wasn't true. And, I just hate the way in which we're hoodwinked all the time. We don't know who to believe. Political parties, there's this constant punch and Judy. One party says something, the other party says the other. And the innocent voter, desperately trying to make sense of it all, doesn't know who to believe.
And you'd hope you could go to BBC Verify, but unfortunately you go to BBC Verify and you'll find that it's completely false anyway, perhaps. Paul, the issue here, and what I was getting at, we're talking about this story, which I think is a very important story, because we're talking about the crisis in our prisons. The Daily Express have got their numbers from somewhere. They don't just make up these numbers, I would have thought. I certainly hope not. Regardless, though, 80% capacity, that's still not full capacity. Why are we releasing people? Is there a political agenda? Because I know, listen, I have worked within the Labour Party myself, Paul, so I can speak from experience and know that Labour people in general are soft on crime. They think rehabilitation is a better idea than locking people up, and we can't deny it, Paul.
Well, there will be nurses off shift tonight watching this. There'll be prison officers who've just come off shift watching this tonight who know full well that their services are absolutely at capacity. They will be coming home in tears of frustration because they can't do the job they want to, because the overflowing prisons and the absolutely squeezed NHS is at capacity. So let's ask them. Let's get them to come in and
when we talk about NHS capacity, but we've got 30,000 doctors waiting to be trained in this country, and it doesn't make sense, does it? Help me make it make sense, everybody, because I don't get it anymore.
Well, I think you're right. But look, let's ask actually the victims of crimes here, who, when they see their perpetrator released early, popping champagne corks on their early release, turning up to a Lamborghini that's been picking them up, cheering, shouting, "Thank you, Keir Starmer, for letting them out early." What do you think that says? What message that sends to victims?
You can't have that both ways. That was a result of the fact that the prisons were overflowing.
That was the fact that your government decided. It was a Labour choice.
Decision.
Well, they wouldn't be
decision.
We don't want them out on the streets, for fun. It's because the prisons are so full they have to be released.
Well, look, sorry, you can't release... They kept Lucy Letbury in jail for doing absolutely nothing, basically, yet they let out violent
she
rapists,
did encourage people to burn down a hotel.
No, she didn't. She put
She encouraged people to burn down a hotel, and that's why she went. And she admitted it, and she went to jail.
Not as dangerous as somebody who is a rapist who was let out on the
Agreed,
street.
but she still committed a crime.
All right.
So it was ridiculous. It was disgraceful, and frankly, Keir Starmer letting out people who went on to murder. I'm sorry. Blood on their...
Two-tier Keir. That's what it's all about.
Well, there you go. There you go. Well, listen, I'm going to read out the Ministry of Justice claims about this story. This is not true at all, and that all male prisons are over 80% capacity. We also contacted Paul's Society, the Fabian Society, and they wanted to make it clear that the article mentioned is an opinion piece on their website that isn't necessarily reflective of Fabian Society views. The Fabian Society is home to open, wide-ranging debate and conversation. In response to the news of Brahim Kadur Sharif's re-arrest, the Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy said this: "We inherited a prison system in crisis, and I'm appalled at the rate of early releases in error this is causing. I'm determined to grip this problem. That is why I've ordered new tough release checks, commissioned an independent investigation into systemic failures, and begun overhauling archaic paper-based systems still used in some prisons." Well, there you have it, everybody. You can make your own minds up.